The box was empty. Lisa stood frozen in the hallway closet, staring down at the small velvet box that, for as long as she could remember, had held her mother's emerald wedding ring. It was supposed to be there, tucked under the old wool scarf she never wore but could never throw out. She had checked 3 times, moved every item, felt around every corner of the shelf. But the ring, her mother's ring, was gone. She sat down slowly on the carpeted floor, heart pounding in her chest. That ring had been passed down through 3 generations. Her grandmother wore it through the war. Her mother wore it until the day she died. Lisa had kept it not as jewelry, but as legacy, waiting for the right moment to pass it on to her daughter Emily, who was about to graduate college. She had planned it all. A private dinner, a quiet moment, a letter to accompany it, written weeks ago, sitting in her desk drawer. Now the box was empty. Lisa stood, suddenly lightheaded, and called out into the house. "Greg, did you move something from the hall closet?" Her husband's voice echoed from the garage. "What? No. Why?" She hesitated. "The box, the ring box, it's missing." Silence, then footsteps. Greg appeared in the doorway, wiping grease from his hands. "What ring?" Lisa narrowed her eyes. "You know what ring, my mother's." He blinked, too slowly. "I haven't touched anything in there," he said. "Maybe you moved it?" She studied his face, the shift in his tone, the tiny tremor in his fingers. "I didn't move it," she said, voice calm but cold. "And no one else lives here." Greg offered a weak smile. "Maybe it got misplaced. I'll help you look." They searched the whole house. Drawers, jewelry boxes, safe, storage bins, nothing. By the time the sun dipped low, Lisa sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. Greg walked in, his voice just above a whisper. "We'll find it." She didn't look at him. She didn't need to, because deep down, she already knew. The ring wasn't lost. It had been taken. Lisa didn't sleep that night. She lay in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling while Greg snored beside her like everything was fine. Like the world hadn't shifted under her feet. Like something sacred hadn't just vanished from their lives. By morning, something had hardened inside her. She made coffee, silent and steady, letting the hum of the kettle drown out the questions in her head. Greg walked in, kissed her cheek like always. She didn't flinch, but she didn't smile either. After he left for work, she sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop and opened their bank account. She hadn't done that in a while. Greg had handled most of the finances over the last few years, ever since she left her job to focus on the kids and her aging father. She'd trusted him. Completely. The numbers didn't lie. 3 cash withdrawals in the last month. Large amounts. Vague descriptions. And then, hidden in a folder of scanned documents, she found something that made her breath catch. A pawn ticket. The name of a shop 2 towns over. The item description was vague. Vintage gold ring with green stone. Her hands trembled. She pushed back from the table and stood, staring at the document. She wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like. But she wasn't naive. Not anymore. She drove out to the pawn shop that afternoon, gripping the wheel tighter than she needed to. The place looked exactly how she'd imagined it. Flickering sign, iron bars on the windows, the faint scent of dust and desperation in the air. A young man behind the counter looked up and offered a bored smile. "Help you find something?" Lisa slid the ticket across the glass. "This was filed a few weeks ago. I need to know if the item is still here." He scanned the number, clicked a few keys, then looked up, more alert. "It's already been sold, sorry." Lisa's stomach dropped. "Do you remember who brought it in?" He hesitated. "Ma'am, we're not really supposed to." She leaned in. "Please, it belonged to my mother." The man sighed. Middle-aged guy, brown jacket, said he inherited it, looked nervous. Lisa closed her eyes for a second. "Do you know where it went?" He shook his head. "Sold fast. Emerald centerpieces always do." She thanked him and walked out, the weight in her chest pressing deeper than before. By the time she got home, Greg was already back. He looked up from the couch as she entered. "Hey, everything okay?" She didn't answer, just stood there, holding the copy of the pawn ticket in her hand. Greg's face changed. The blood drained from it. "I can explain," he said. "No," Lisa replied. Her voice was flat, cold, controlled. "You can confess." He stood slowly. "I didn't mean to. It wasn't what you think. You sold my mother's ring." Her voice cracked. "You sold our family legacy." "I had no choice," he said. "I was in deep. The gambling, it got out of hand. I thought I could win it back. I thought." Lisa raised her hand. Stop. Greg froze. Tears pricked her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. I trusted you. I let you handle everything. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me. I was going to fix it, he said. I just needed time. Lisa took a breath, long and steady. You've run out of time. She turned and walked out of the room. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Not broken, but broken open. The woman who had once given everything to protect her family was about to start protecting herself. Lisa didn't cry until the third night. The house had grown strangely quiet since that conversation. No more Greg whistling in the kitchen, no more casual questions about dinner or what was on TV. She had asked him to leave the next morning, not in rage, but with a calm so cold it frightened them both. He had packed a small bag, not arguing. He didn't plead. Maybe he knew it was pointless. Maybe he knew she wasn't the same woman anymore. Now, 3 nights later, Lisa sat alone in her daughter's old bedroom, the one they hadn't touched since Emily left for college. The trophies on the shelves, the faded posters, the cluttered desk drawer. She opened it slowly, reached beneath the stack of notebooks, and pulled out the letter. The one she'd written for Emily weeks ago. It was meant to accompany the heirloom ring, the one she no longer had. The letter was still sealed, her handwriting neat and deliberate across the front. For when you're ready to carry our story. Lisa broke the seal and began to read. Halfway through, the tears came. Not just for the ring, but for the years. For the silence she'd tolerated. For the countless ways she'd poured herself into this family. Holding the line, holding it all together, only to realize she'd become invisible in her own home. She cried until her chest hurt. And when the tears finally stopped, she sat there for a long time, letter in her lap, staring at nothing. The next morning, she woke up with a strange sense of stillness. Not peace exactly, but clarity. She spent the day cleaning. Not the kind of cleaning that was about dust or clutter, but the kind where you make space. She cleared out the guest room, vacuumed under furniture, opened all the windows. Then, almost without thinking, she opened the hall closet again. The empty velvet box was still there. She didn't move it. She just stared at it. Then she walked into the storage room and pulled out a large canvas wrapped in brown paper. It had been there for over a decade, her last painting, the one she never finished, the one she told herself she would come back to when the kids are older, when life slows down. When there's time. She set it on the easel, pulled a drop cloth across the floor, opened the windows wider. The spring air rushed in, cool and earthy. She hadn't touched a brush in 17 years. Her fingers were stiff at first, awkward. But as the hours passed, she found a rhythm. She stopped thinking, stopped calculating, stopped mourning, and just painted. Colors blended, lines blurred. Emotion spilled onto canvas in ways her voice never could. She didn't notice the time until the room had grown dark. She stepped back, covered in streaks of color and light sweat. Her hands ached. Her shoulders throbbed. But her heart was finally beating in her own rhythm again. That night, she sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the ticking wall clock. She opened a blank notebook and wrote 3 lines at the top of the page. Things I still have. Things he cannot take. Things I will pass on. She underlined the last one. Then, she turned the page and started making a new list, not of things, but of truths. Lisa didn't tell anyone she was painting again. It felt too fragile, too personal, like speaking it aloud might shatter whatever quiet power she had rediscovered. So she kept it private. Just her, the canvas, and the parts of herself that had been buried for far too long. Days blurred into weeks. She painted every morning after making coffee, every afternoon when the house was silent, and sometimes late into the night. It was messy, cathartic, and unlike anything she remembered. But this time, it wasn't about perfection. It was about release. One evening, after finishing a stormy abstract piece she titled Fracture, Lisa impulsively took a photo of it and posted it to a local women's artist group on Facebook. She added a short caption, 52, starting over. This one's called Fracture. Feels fitting. She didn't expect anything, so when her phone buzzed with dozens of notifications just an hour later, she stared in disbelief. Comments poured in. Raw and stunning. I feel this so deeply. Please tell me you're showing somewhere. Then a private message came from a woman named Clara, who ran a small art co-op downtown. She asked if Lisa would consider submitting a few pieces for their spring gallery showcase. "I saw fracture," Clara wrote. "It stopped me cold. We need that kind of truth right now." Lisa read the message 3 times, unsure whether to laugh or cry. That night, she stood in front of her mirror, holding her phone, staring at her reflection. For the first time in years, she saw a woman she didn't entirely recognize. Not someone broken, someone becoming. She replied to Clara with a simple yes. In the following weeks, Lisa painted like a woman on fire. She pulled out every unfinished piece from her past and let them speak again, some through completion, others through being painted over entirely. Each one told a different part of her story. A still life of a broken bowl she had once tried to glue back together. A silhouette of a woman reaching into water, searching for something beneath the surface. A self-portrait, not of her face, but of her hands. Open, stained, strong. Emily came home from college the weekend before the show. Lisa hesitated at first, unsure of how to explain everything that had unfolded. But when Emily stepped into the converted guest room studio, she froze. "You painted all of this?" Lisa nodded, watching her daughter's eyes widen. Emily walked slowly around the room, studying each canvas with reverence. "I didn't even know you used to paint," she whispered. "I stopped before you were born," Lisa said quietly. "Then I stopped remembering why." Emily turned, her voice soft. "They're amazing and kind of heartbreaking." Lisa smiled faintly. "Yeah, they are." She didn't tell Emily the whole story, not yet, but she did hand her the letter she had once planned to give with the heirloom ring. Emily read it in silence. When she finished, she looked up with tears in her eyes. "I don't need the ring," she said. "This," she gestured around the room, "this is the legacy I want." Lisa swallowed hard, her throat tight. Maybe, she thought, losing the ring had made space for something else, something she didn't know she needed to give. And maybe some heirlooms aren't passed down in velvet boxes. Maybe they're painted in layers, handed down in courage. And maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. The night of the gallery opening arrived with a sky full of stars and a nervous flutter in Lisa's chest that reminded her of prom night. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting a simple black dress, nothing extravagant, but elegant enough to feel like a statement. A statement that said, "I'm here. I'm still standing, and I'm not hiding anymore." Emily walked into the room, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. "You look powerful," she said. Lisa smiled, tucking a curl behind her ear. "That's the plan." The gallery buzzed with energy when they arrived. Clara greeted her with a warm hug and immediately ushered her toward her section. 3 large canvases displayed under soft lighting, framed in reclaimed wood, Lisa had chosen herself. Above them was a small plaque. Lisa Monroe, Fractures and Frames. A series about rebuilding after loss, about choosing honesty over silence and finding art in the pieces left behind. People lingered. They asked questions. They complimented the textures, the emotion, the vulnerability in the strokes. One couple stood silently in front of Fracture for a long time, holding hands. Lisa watched from a few steps back, her heart in her throat. She didn't feel like an imposter. Not anymore. By the end of the night, 2 pieces had sold, including the empty frame, a canvas she had painted in the exact dimensions of the jewelry box where her mother's ring once lived. It was minimalist, stark, but it resonated. When the buyer shook her hand, he said, "I don't know what you lost, but I felt it, and somehow it reminded me of what I still have." Lisa smiled and thanked him, her voice steady. Greg showed up near closing. She saw him from across the room, standing near the back, hands in his pockets, eyes red-rimmed but clear. He didn't approach immediately. He waited until the crowd thinned. When he finally came over, he looked at the paintings first, then at her. "You turned pain into something real," he said. "Something that matters." Lisa didn't respond. She let him sit with the weight of that. "I've been going to meetings," he added. "Every week. I've paid off what I could. I'm not asking for anything. I'm proud of you." She nodded slowly. "Thank you." "I got the ring back," he said, almost in a whisper. "It cost me more than I thought, but it's here." He reached into his coat pocket and carefully pulled out the velvet box. He held it out to her. Lisa looked at it for a long moment, then closed his fingers around it again. "I don't need it anymore," she said gently. "It doesn't carry what I thought it did." Greg looked stunned. But it's yours. I thought you'd want it back. I've already taken back everything I truly needed, she replied. Then she turned and walked away, toward Emily, toward the art, toward the version of herself she had finally reclaimed. She didn't look back, and the box, still in Greg's hand, felt heavier than ever. Weeks passed, and the world didn't fall apart. Greg remained distant, but respectful. He sent updates about his recovery, receipts of his repayments, even letters of apology addressed to both Lisa and the children. Lisa read them all. She appreciated the effort, but she no longer waited for redemption from him. She had found it in herself. Her paintings continued to gain attention. Clara offered her a permanent spot in the co-op, and a local women's shelter commissioned Lisa to create a mural in their main lobby, something that would speak to survival, softness, and the strength of starting over. Lisa poured her heart into that wall. She painted hands reaching upward, woven with color and scars. She painted broken lines mended by gold, inspired by the Japanese art of kintsugi. She painted a woman standing barefoot in water, holding nothing but her own breath. When it was done, the shelter staff cried. One of the women staying there walked up, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "It's like you painted my insides." Lisa didn't reply. She just took her hand and held it. At home, life took on a quiet rhythm. Emily came home more often. They cooked together, laughed over old memories, and even painted side by side some weekends. Emily on sketch pads, Lisa on canvas. Their relationship had deepened, no longer just mother and daughter, but two women finding themselves in very different stages of life. One Saturday, Emily knocked on Lisa's studio door, holding a small wooden frame. Inside was a print of the empty frame, and beneath it, she had written in calligraphy, "We inherit what can't be taken." Lisa blinked back tears. "Where did you learn to write like that?" Emily grinned. "YouTube. And also, I've been watching you." They hugged, quietly, for a long time. That night, Lisa placed the framed piece on her mantel, right where the old jewelry box used to sit. The spot no longer felt empty, it felt sacred. Later, as she sipped tea on the porch and listened to the soft wind move through the trees, Lisa thought about everything she had lost, and everything she had built since. The betrayal had cut deep. The ring was gone, returned, but no longer a symbol of anything she needed. The pain was real, but so was the strength it unlocked. She didn't regret drawing the line. She didn't regret choosing herself. And most of all, she didn't regret believing that what had been broken could be rebuilt. Not the same, but stronger. Lisa knew now, some heirlooms are forged in gold, but the most precious ones are made from truth. And no one, not even someone you once loved, can ever sell that away. Months passed, seasons shifted, and Lisa remained steady. Her home, once a place of quiet heartbreak, had become something new, something almost sacred. The living room was now part gallery, part gathering space. Friends, neighbors, even strangers dropped by to see her work, to talk, to share stories over coffee and light. She had become, unexpectedly, a kind of anchor, not just for herself, but for others who had been broken too. One afternoon, a woman named Teresa knocked on Lisa's door. She looked nervous, holding a manila envelope against her chest. "I saw your painting at the shelter," she said. "It felt like it was me." Lisa invited her in. They sat, they spoke, and eventually Teresa opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, old faded, of her own paintings, done years ago, before marriage, before addiction, before loss. "I haven't touched a brush in 15 years, Teresa whispered. "I didn't think I was allowed to anymore." Lisa reached across the table and placed her hand gently over hers. "You are," she said, "and you don't need anyone's permission." That moment wasn't unique, it kept happening. Word spread. A small circle formed. Women, mothers, caretakers, survivors began gathering at Lisa's house once a week. They painted, they cried, they sat in silence, they shared tea and laughter. Some brought grief, others brought nothing but the need to begin. Lisa called the group the unbroken line. Because no matter how damaged they felt, each of them carried a thread of beauty, of strength, of voice that deserved to be passed on. One evening, Emily brought home a visitor, her new partner, Ava. It was the first time Emily openly introduced someone with such care. Lisa noticed how gently Ava listened, how easily she fit into the house's rhythm. Later that night, when Lisa hugged Emily goodbye, her daughter held on a little longer. "You're not just my mom anymore," Emily whispered. "You're a woman I admire." Lisa didn't reply. She just closed her eyes and let those words soak into every part of her that once felt invisible. She was no longer waiting to be seen. She had made herself undeniable. On the anniversary of the gallery opening, Lisa hosted a private exhibition in her own backyard. Lanterns lined the trees. Paintings hung from makeshift stands and fences. At the center was one new piece, large, soft, radiant. It was titled Inheritance. The painting showed no heirlooms, no rings, no boxes, just a woman standing with her hands open to the sky, colors blooming from her fingertips, while others reached out, not to take, but to receive. As the sun set, Lisa stood before the gathered guests. She didn't give a speech, just a quiet toast, to every woman who ever thought she lost too much to start again. And as glasses clinked and hearts opened, Lisa smiled. Because she knew now, with unshakable certainty, her legacy had never been a ring. It was a ripple. And it had only just begun. This story is a reminder that sometimes what we lose makes space for what we were always meant to become. Lisa didn't just survive her husband's betrayal. She transformed it into a legacy of her own. What would you have done in her place? Comment 2 if you were inspired by her strength, or 7 if you think she should have made a different choice. And if stories like this speak to your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more true stories that hit home.